Hey, tonight you're not in your bed. You're in a low-lit room in Thebes around the year 1250 BCE. The air is thick with the scent of incense and old quiet grief. You think love in ancient Egypt was all gold and gods? Try love when it's been severed by death. When the only words you can send are written on papyrus and whispered into the void. The oil lamp beside you flickers, casting dancing shadows on the mud brick wall. Your hand trembles as you hold the reed pen. This isn't a letter, it's a plea. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why these letters were never meant for the living, and why their sorrow still echoes through millennia. What time is it where you are? I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from tonight. And if you enjoy these quiet, strange dives into the past, maybe hit subscribe. It means more than you know. Now, dim the lights. Let your body sink into the mattress. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft, steady hum. You are not in control anymore. You're in history. And history doesn't care if your letter ever gets a reply. Your room is quiet, too quiet. The silence is new and unwelcome. It feels heavy, like the midday heat that has only just begun to fade. You live in a small mud brick house. Like every other house in this village of Deir el Medina, a community of craftsmen and artisans tucked away on the edge of the desert just west of Thebes. Your job and your neighbor's job is to build and decorate the eternal tombs for the pharaohs in the Valley of the Kings. A sacred task, but a grueling one. Your home has only a few rooms. The thick mud brick walls keep the space surprisingly cool during the day, but they turn cold when the desert night falls. The floor is packed earth hard and cool beneath your bare feet. You don't own much. A few low stools, a wooden chest for your few linen garments, and clay jars for water beer and grain. On the flat roof, where you and your family used to sleep on hot summer nights, there is now only you. From here, you can hear the heartbeat of the village, the laughter of children in a nearby alley, the chatter of women at the public well, the distant braying of a donkey, and a little further, the constant whisper of life along the Nile. The river that brings the silt, that brings life, but sometimes it takes everything away. The air carries the scent of dust of smoke from clay ovens, and the distinct musty smell of the river, a mix of mud reeds and decaying life. It's the smell of home, the smell of life. But to you right now, it only smells of emptiness. Your marriage didn't begin with love poems or vows whispered under the moonlight. It began like most marriages in Egypt, practically. An arrangement between two families, a contract to ensure stability, to bear children, to maintain a household. Your husband was a skilled craftsman, a quiet man with calloused but steady hands. You were a farmer's daughter, bringing with you a dowry of a few pots and a promise of diligence. Love was not a prerequisite. It was something that was expected to grow like a barley seed sown in the fertile mud of the Nile after the flood. And it did. Your love was built from small things. From the way he smiled when you brought him beer in the fields. From the way you mended his frayed tunic. From the simple meals you shared after a long day's work. A piece of barley bread, a few onions, and a cup of thin beer. You worked together, built this home together. You attended festivals together, made offerings to the gods, and prayed for a good harvest. You remember the nights you sat on the roof looking up at the star-filled sky, telling each other small stories. He was not a poet. He did not know how to use flowery words. But he knew how to keep the hearth warm, and he knew how to look at you as if you were the most precious thing the gods had ever gifted him. And to you, that was more than poetry. Your beliefs, like those of every Egyptian, are not just a part of life. They are life. You know that death is not the end. It is merely a doorway, a difficult journey through the Duat, the underworld, a place filled with demons, guarded gates, and trials that demand wisdom and courage. You believe that after death, your husband's soul had to face the judgment of Osiris. His heart was placed on a scale weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and order. If his heart was heavy with sin, it would be devoured by the monster Ammit, and his soul would dissolve into nothingness. But if his heart was pure, as light as the feather, he would be welcomed into the field of reeds, an eternal paradise. But more importantly, you believe in the Akesh, the effective spirit of the dead. You believe that after passing the trials, your husband did not disappear. He became a powerful spirit, one who can hear your prayers, who can intervene in the world of the living, and who can even speak to the gods on your behalf. The Ek is not a ghost. It is a protector, an intermediary, and that is why you are sitting here, in this quiet room. He left too quickly. A fever took hold after days of working underground in the hot, suffocating air of a tomb. At first, it was just a chill, then cold sweats. His skin burned with heat. You cared for him, applied poultices of herbs, and recited the spells the priests had taught. But the fever did not break. It clung to him like a hungry demon. And then, one quiet morning, before the sun had risen above the eastern cliffs, he took his last breath. Your grief was immense, a cold void in a house that was once so warm. But now another fear is growing. His cousin, a man with endless greed, has begun to eye the small plot of land the two of you cultivated together. He says that because you have no son, the land must go to him. He has threatened you has taken some of your farming tools. You went to the village elder, but he only shook his head. The laws of men are complex and cruel. You feel helpless, alone. And then you remember the Aki. You remember that your husband has not truly left you. He is just in another place, a place from which he can still protect you. And that is when you decide. You will write a letter to the dead, a plea to your beloved husband, asking him to speak to the gods, to protect you from injustice, to be your guardian one more time. The reed pen in your hand trembles. It is time to begin. You dip the tip of your pen into a small clay pot. The ink is black thick and smells faintly of soot and sweet gum. It's a simple mixture one you made yourself from the charred remains of the cooking fire, blended with a little water and gum arabic to bind it. This is how words are given form, not with grand gestures, but with humble materials. Soot, water, and intention. The papyrus scroll before you is a precious thing. You unroll it carefully, the dried fibers making a soft crackling sound in the quiet room. It feels coarse beneath your fingertips, a mat of woven reeds, pounded flat, and dried under the relentless Egyptian sun. You remember seeing the papyrus boats on the Nile, their green stalks harvested from the marshy banks. You remember the process. The outer rind stripped away, the inner pith, sliced into thin ribbons, laid in crisscrossing layers, pounded until their own sticky sap bound them together. A single sheet took days of labor. A scroll like this, it cost a week's wages, maybe more. It is not something to be wasted. You hold the pen, a simple reed, its end frayed and softened from chewing until it could hold the ink. Your hand, so used to the weight of a hoe or the roughness of grinding grain, feels clumsy holding something so delicate. Writing is a privilege, a form of magic that not many know. You learned from your father, a village elder, who insisted his daughters could read the markings on a grain tally as well as any son. Your husband, he could not write. He spoke with his hands with the tools of his trade. You were the one who kept the records, who wrote the contracts, who would now write to him when no one else could. You touch the pen to the scroll. The black ink bleeds slightly into the pale fibers, a dark stain of purpose. This is where your grief will live now, not just in your heart, but on this fragile, precious sheet. The first word is the hardest. It feels too final, too real. For a moment, you just sit there, the silence of the room pressing in the weight of 1,000 unspoken feelings, resting on the tip of a single reed. You take a breath, calming the tremor in your hand, and then you begin to write. You write the first careful hieroglyphs, each stroke a prayer. To my excellent brother, you write, the husband my heart still calls by name. In Egypt, to call your husband brother Sen is not strange. It is a term of endearment, a declaration of equality, and of a bond that runs deeper than a simple marriage contract. He was not just a husband or the head of your household. He was your companion, your confidant, a second half of your own soul. And now, though he has walked into the eternal lands, that connection is not broken. You believe he is not truly gone. His physical body, his cot, may lie in the tomb, But his ba, his soul has flown free, and his ka, his life force endures. Most importantly, he is now an ache, an effective spirit, a shining soul who has passed the judgment of Osiris and gained power in the afterlife. He can hear you. He can speak to the other gods, the other spirits. He can influence the world of the living. This is not a fanciful hope. It is a truth as certain as the sunrise. Many others have written letters just like this one. They write on ceramic bowls placed in the tomb chapel, with offerings believing the deceased will read them. They tell of injustices, of grievances, pleading with the dead to intervene, to act as their advocate in the divine court. You take a deep breath, the smell of ink and papyrus filling your senses, and you continue to write. I write to you from our house, which is now filled only with silence. I was a good wife to you, was I not? I never did anything to vex your heart while you were here. I cared for you in your sickness. I managed your funeral with all the proper rites, and I have made regular offerings of food and drink so your spirit would not hunger in the next world. So why do you allow this injustice to happen to me? You pause, a knot of grief tightening in your throat. Since you left your cousin, the one you never trusted has come here. He says that I, a woman with no son, have no claim to the land we tilled together. He has taken our plow. He has threatened my servants. What am I to do, my brother? Tell me, where are you in that eternal kingdom, and why are you silent? Your hand pauses over the papyrus. The ink on your reed pen begins to dry. Your plea to your husband feels raw, almost accusatory. A wave of guilt washes over you. You did not mean to sound so demanding. He was good to you. He was always good to you. You remember your beginning, and a softer memory pushes the anger aside. You decide to write it down, to remind him, and perhaps to remind yourself of the bond you once shared. Do you remember our beginning? You write the hieroglyphs for remember, flowing more gently now. I remember it. I remember the day my father told me I was to join your household. I was frightened. You were older, a man respected for his craft, and I was just a girl from a farmer's family, with hands stained by soil, not by the fine pigments you used to paint the tombs. In ancient Egypt, a wedding was not what it is in other lands, or in other times. There was no grand religious ceremony, no priest of Amun-Ra to bless your union under the eyes of the gods. Marriage for people like you was a simple, practical matter, a civil agreement. It began the moment you, the bride, packed your belongings, a few linen dresses, some cooking pots, a small wooden headrest, and walked from your father's house to your new husband's house. Your families and neighbors would walk with you, a small procession of celebration and farewell. There was a feast, of course, always a feast. It marked the formal start of your new life together. You remember that day. The air was warm, filled with the scent of roasted duck and honey cakes, luxuries your family could rarely afford. Your father had given your husband a marriage contract, a papyrus scroll detailing the property you brought with you. It was not a sale. It was an agreement. The property was yours to keep, and if the marriage were to end, you would take it with you. Women in Egypt had rights. You could own land, you could inherit, you could even bring a man to court. Your father had made sure the contract was fair. He wanted you to be protected. You wore your finest linen dress, freshly washed and pleated. Around your neck was a simple necklace of blue faience beads, a gift from your mother. Your hair was braided with lotus flowers, their scent intoxicating and calming. When you arrived at his home, this very home you sit in, now he was waiting. He didn't speak much. He never did. But his eyes, you remember his eyes. They weren't the eyes of a master claiming new property. They were the eyes of a man who seemed just as nervous as you were. He took your hand, and his was rough from his work, but his touch was gentle. He led you inside, and his family welcomed you. His mother gave you a small amulet of Taweret, the hippopotamus goddess, a fierce protector of mothers and children. It was a blessing and an expectation, all in one. You ate, you drank the sweet date wine, you listened to the music of a lone harpist your husband had hired for the occasion. And as night fell, you became husband and wife. There was no thunderous declaration from the gods. There was only the quiet closing of a door, the dim light of an oil lamp, and the beginning of a life shared in the small, sacred space between two people. Love was not the reason you married, but that night in that small house under a blanket of desert stars, it began to feel like a possibility. You never wrote me poems. You continue writing the memory of your wedding feast fading into a gentle melancholy. Your hands were made for the chisel, and the hammer, not the delicate reed pen. Your words were simple, direct. But sometimes, my brother, your silence was a poem. The way you would look at me across the room when you thought I wasn't watching, that was a verse. The way you would bring me a lotus flower from the riverbank after a long day, that was a song. You smile faintly. It was true. He was no poet. But love in Egypt was not confined to the silent, stoic hearts of men like him. It lived, breathed, and screamed with passion on papyrus scrolls, shared and recited in the private moments of life. You had heard them, the love songs. Your friends, other women in the village, would sometimes gather in the evenings, and one who could read would share verses from a scroll. The words were so intimate, so full of longing, they made you blush. These were not the grand hymns sung in the temples. They were personal, raw, and deeply human. You remember one, a poem from a collection that a scribe in your village owned, written from a man to his beloved. He called her the one and only the most beautiful in the land, and he described her as a lotus blossom in her grace, her eyes like the stars. He compared her love to the finest wine, and admitted that just the thought of her made his heart beat erratically. Another poem you heard was from a woman, her voice bold and full of desire. She called her lover, my brother, just as you did. She spoke of wanting to be the linen that touched his skin, the perfumed oil in his hair. She confessed her longing to rush to him without caring for her appearance, to be with him by the water where they could be alone. It was a world of secret meetings, of stolen glances, over garden walls of hearts sick with a sweet sickness that only the presence of the beloved could cure. This was the Egypt that lived behind the stoic temple walls and the rigid hierarchy of the gods, an Egypt where love was not just a practical arrangement, but a powerful, sometimes overwhelming force. The poems were filled with the natural world. Lovers were like sycamore trees, offering shade, like swift gazelles, like the cool north wind in the summer heat. Nature was not a backdrop for their love. It was a part of it. Your husband never spoke such words. His love was in the way he repaired the leaking roof, without you asking, the way he built a sturdy stool for you to sit on while you ground grain, the way his hand would find yours in the dark of the night. His love was an action, not a verse. And yet, as you write your letter to him now, you wish you had a poem. You wish you had one of those scrolls to read to him, to remind him of the passion that existed in the world, the passion you both felt, even if you never gave it such beautiful words. You dip your pen again and decide to write your own poem, a simple one. My love for you is like the Nile, you write. It floods, it recedes, but it never, ever runs dry. You pause, looking at the line you just wrote. My love for you is like the Nile. It's true. The great river was the center of your world, the source of your life together. Your memories of him are not set in palaces or temples. They are set in the black, fertile earth, under the piercing sun, by the slow-moving water. You decide to remind him of this, of the life you built, not with gold, but with sweat and soil. I remember the feel of the sun on our backs as we worked the fields. You write. I remember the ache in my bones at the end of the day, an ache we both shared. Your life was governed by 3 seasons each, dictated by the river. First came Akhet, the season of the inundation. Around June, the Nile would swell its waters, rising to cover the parched farmland, leaving behind a thick, rich layer of black silt. This was Kemet, the Black Land, the source of Egypt's life, and the very name of your country. During this time, there was no farm work. You and your husband would be called for state labor, corvée labor. Perhaps you worked on a pharaoh's tomb hauling stones or helped repair a canal. It was grueling work, but it was for the gods and for Egypt. Then came Péré, the season of growing. As the floodwaters receded, the planting began. You can still feel it now, the sensation of your bare feet sinking into the cool, damp mud. You would walk behind your husband as he guided the simple wooden plow pulled by two oxen. He would break the earth, and you would follow, casting seeds of emmer wheat and barley into the furrows. Your days were long from sunrise to sunset. You would stop only for a brief meal of bread, onions, and beer, eaten in the sliver of shade cast by a lonely sycamore tree. You worked together, your movements a familiar rhythm. You weeded the flax fields, tended the vegetable garden where you grew lentils, garlic, and melons. The work was endless, your back in a permanent curve, your hands rough and cracked. Finally there was Shemu, the season of the harvest. This was the most frantic time. The sun was at its most brutal, the air thick with dust. You and your husband would work side by side with sickles, their wooden handles worn smooth by years of use. You would cut the stalks of grain, bind them into sheaves, and carry them to the threshing floor. There, oxen would trample the grain to separate the seed from the chaff. It was hot, dusty, back-breaking work, but there was a joy to it, a satisfaction in seeing the storehouses fill in, knowing you had enough to pay your taxes to the Pharaoh's granary, and if the gods were kind enough to feed your family through the year. This was your life, a cycle of water, earth, and sun, a life of shared labor. Your husband wasn't a king or a scribe. He was a man of the earth. His strength was in his arms, his wisdom in his knowledge of the seasons. He knew when to plant, when to irrigate, when to harvest. His love for you was like his love for the land, steady, patient, and productive. You made our world grow. You write a tear, blurring the ink. And now, without you, the fields feel barren, no matter how high the Nile rises. You write about the week it began. It wasn't a dramatic event. There was no omen in the sky, no snake crossing your path, no sign from the gods that your world was about to be unmade. It started simply. It started with a weariness in his bones that he could not shake. You came home from the tombs, and your shoulders were slumped lower than usual. You write your own shoulders aching in sympathy with the memory. You said the air in the new chamber was stale, that it made your head ache. I told you it was just the heat, the dust. I told you to drink more water, to rest in the shade. We both believed it. It's always the heat, isn't it? The sun is the first enemy and the last. But it wasn't the sun. Not this time. The next day, he couldn't eat his morning bread. He pushed the bowl of porridge away, his face pale beneath its sun-darkened complexion. A shiver ran through him, though the morning air was already thick and warm. That was the first real sign of fear for you. To shiver in the Egyptian heat was unnatural. It was a sign that the coldness was not from the air, but from within. A sign that a shadow had fallen over him. You made him lie down on the reed mat in the coolest corner of the house. You placed a damp linen cloth on his forehead. You thought of the common ailments. The river fever that came with the mosquitoes in the marshlands. The stomach sickness that sometimes followed a bad batch of beer. Or perhaps it was the parasites from the Nile, the ones the healers warned of, the invisible worms that burrowed into the skin of those who waded in the shallows. Everyone in the village knew someone who had wasted away from the inside, their belly swelling, while their limbs grew thin. You prayed to the gods, it wasn't that. By the third day, the fever was afire. His skin burned to the touch, yet he complained of being cold, pulling the wool blanket around him, his teeth chattering. He began to speak in his sleep, not of you, but of the tomb he had been painting. He spoke of gods with jackal heads and of gateways guarded by serpents. This worried you most of all. In ancient Egypt, sickness was never just a matter of the body. It could be an attack on the soul. You began to wonder, had he disturbed a spirit in the tomb? Had he failed to say the right prayer before entering the sacred space? Was this the anger of a long-dead king, or the work of a demon sent by an enemy? The line between the natural and the supernatural was thin, porous, like the linen you used to strain water. A sickness could come from the river's water, but it could also be a curse whispered by a jealous neighbor. A wound could become infected from dirt, but that infection could be a punishment from Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess of plague, and healing, a deity you had to both fear and appease. You did what you could. You brewed teas from willow bark to ease his fever. You burned incense and recited incantations to ward off malevolent spirits. You left offerings of bread and beer at the small household shrine, begging the protectors of your home to intervene. But the shadow did not lift. His breathing grew shallow, a soft, rattling sound that filled the small house and left no room for hope. Your neighbors fell silent when you went to the well. They would meet your eyes with pity, then look away, as if your grief were a contagion they feared catching. You were alone with him in the dim light of the room, watching the life slowly, relentlessly drain from the man who was your entire world. It wasn't a great battle. It wasn't a pharaoh's decree. It was a simple, quiet, creeping thing. A fever that came from nowhere and was about to take him everywhere you could not follow. We called for the SWNW. You write the hieroglyphs for physician, feeling heavy and useless now. He came on the 5th day. He smelled of myrrh and seriousness. I thought now, things will be well. I thought his knowledge could command the shadow to retreat. The arrival of the SWNW was a significant event. These were not mere village hedge wizards. Egyptian physicians were respected throughout the ancient world, trained in temple schools, known as the House of Life. They studied medical texts written on papyrus scrolls filled with anatomical observations, surgical procedures, and a vast pharmacopoeia of herbal remedies. They were part priest, part scientist men who understood that the body was a landscape where both gods and diseases roamed. You remember him entering your small home, his presence filling the space. He carried a wooden chest filled with his tools, bronze probes, linen bandages, and small alabaster jars containing precious ointments and ground minerals. He did not rush. He was calm, observant. He listened to your husband's chest, felt the heat of his skin, examined his eyes and tongue. He even smelled his breath, searching for signs of the inner sickness. This was Egyptian diagnosis, a careful sensory investigation. Then he consulted his scrolls. You saw him unroll a papyrus, its columns of black and red ink, a map of human suffering. Perhaps it was a copy of the Ebers Papyrus, a text with over 700 magical formulas and remedies for everything from crocodile bites to a sad heart. He murmured the words, identifying the affliction not just by its symptoms, but by the malevolent force he believed was behind it. This is the work of a demon, he might have said, sent by the breath of an enemy. Or, the channels of his body are blocked. We must open them. The treatment began. It was a fusion of the practical and the magical. He prepared a poultice. You remember the ingredients: crushed garlic honey, and something you recognized as mold scraped from a loaf of old bread. He knew, as you knew, that honey could soothe and clean a wound, and that some molds had the power to fight putrefaction. It was a primitive antibiotic, a secret of the earth that worked even if no one knew why. But as he applied the paste to your husband's chest, he chanted. His voice was low and rhythmic, an incantation to the goddess Sekhmet, beseeching her to turn her wrath away to bring healing instead of plague. He prescribed a drink, a bitter brew of herbs meant to purge the body of the sickness. And he gave you an amulet, a small faience carving of the Eye of Horus, a powerful symbol of protection and restoration. Tie this around his neck, the physician instructed. It will guard his spirit while his body fights. You paid him with what little you had, a few jars of beer, a bag of barley. It was a steep price, but you would have given anything. For a day, it seemed to work. The fever broke slightly. Your husband opened his eyes and knew who you were. A fragile hope bloomed in your chest, as delicate as a desert flower after a rare rain. You thanked the gods, you thanked the SWNW. You believed the magic was working, but the shadow had not retreated. It had only paused. The next night, the fever returned with a vengeance fiercer than before. The spells had failed. The remedies were not enough. The amulet lay cold on his chest. And you realized then that the physician had not been fighting a sickness. He had been negotiating with a god, and the god was not listening. In your letter, you do not describe the 70 days he was gone from you. You could not bear to. But you remember them. You remember the emptiness of the house and the quiet, sacred work that was being done in the Wabet, the pure place on the edge of the desert. His body was no longer just a body. It had become a vessel, a sacred object being prepared for its journey into eternity. The embalmers, the priests of Anubis, had taken him. They were the masters of this strange and holy art. You have only heard of the process in hushed tones, but you try to picture it, to honor it, in your memory. You imagine them laying his body on a stone slab. The first cut, a clean incision on his left side, made with a sharp obsidian knife. Through that opening, they would have removed his organs, his stomach, his liver, his lungs, his intestines. They were washed in palm wine, dried and wrapped in linen, each placed into its own sacred container, a canopic jar guarded by one of the four sons of Horus. His heart, however, remained. The heart, the IB, was the seat of intelligence, of emotion, of memory. He would need it for the final judgment. To remove it would be to erase him. Then came the part that made you shiver, even in the heat, the removal of the brain, not through the skull, but through the nose. The embalmers would use long, hooked bronze rods, inserting them into his nostrils, breaking through the thin ethmoid bone, and slowly, painstakingly, pulling out the brain, piece by piece. To the Egyptians, the brain was unimportant, mere stuffing for the skull. Its thoughts and dreams were gone. Only the heart mattered now. Once empty, his body was packed and covered with natron, the natural salt harvested from the dry lake beds of the Wadi el Nasha Natrun. For 40 days the salt would pull the water from his flesh, drying it, preserving it, making it immune to the decay of the mortal world. You imagine him lying there, in the silence of the embalmer's tent, slowly turning into something eternal, something that would not rot, something that could house his Ka and Ba for 1,000,000 years. After 40 days they washed his body one last time with water from the Nile, anointing it with fragrant oils and resins, cedar, myrrh, frankincense. Finally came the wrapping, hundreds of yards of the finest linen. The same linen you wove with your own hands were used to swaddle him. Layer after layer, each fold accompanied by a prayer. Each turn embedding a sacred amulet, into the wrappings a jed pillar for stability, an ankh for life, a scarab beetle for rebirth. His face was covered with a portrait mask, not an exact likeness, but an idealized version, a face for a god. When they returned him to you after 70 days, he was no longer the man you knew. He was a silent divine effigy, a timeless vessel, ready for the next world. He was ready for his house of 1,000,000 years, and your heart broke all over again. I watched as the priests gave you back your senses for the journey ahead. You write your hand steady, now remembering the strange power of that final day. I saw them touch your lips, and I prayed you would be able to speak my name in the field of reeds. The funeral procession was a river of grief flowing from your village to his tomb nestled in the cliffs of the Theban necropolis. Your neighbors, your family, they all walked with you. Professional mourners, women hired for their powerful voices, wailed and tore at their clothes, their cries echoing against the stone, a performance of sorrow to honor the dead. You carried the canopic jars containing his organs. Others carried his funerary furniture, a small stool, his favorite tools, jars of beer and wine. At the entrance to the tomb, the most important ritual of all took place, the opening of the mouth. This was not a symbolic act. To you, it was as real as the sun on your skin. Without it, your husband's spirit would be trapped inside his mummified body, unable to eat, drink, or speak in the afterlife. He would be a prisoner in his own eternal house. His mummy was propped upright by a priest wearing the mask of Anubis, the jackal-headed god who guided the dead. Then the Sem priest, clad in the sacred leopard skin, stepped forward. He held the ritual instruments, first an adze, a woodworking tool, which he touched to your husband's mouth. This was to symbolically break the seal of death, to give him back his voice. The priest chanted his words, ancient and rhythmic, calling on the gods to reawaken the senses. He then used other instruments, each with a specific purpose. A forked blade, known as the pesishkaf, once used to cut the umbilical cord of newborns, was now used to give the deceased a second birth into the afterlife. He touched it to the mouth and eyes. Another instrument shaped like a serpent's head was for opening the eyes so he could see the path through the duat. He touched the ears so he could hear the magic spells. He touched the nose so he could breathe the air of the gods. With each touch, you imagined your husband's spirit stirring. You imagined his stone-like lips parting to take his first breath of eternal life. You imagined his eyes, once clouded by fever, now opening to a world of divine light. The air was thick with the smoke of frankincense. The chanting grew louder, more urgent. It was a moment suspended between worlds, a terrifying and beautiful ritual that blurred the line between the living and the dead. The priest made one final offering, a leg of beef, holding it to the mummy's mouth, a symbolic first meal for the long journey. When the ceremony was over, you felt a sense of calm. He was ready. His body had been preserved. His senses had been restored. He was no longer a corpse. He was a fully equipped spiritual being, an ankh ready to face the trials ahead. His journey had truly begun. And as they carried his sarcophagus into the darkness of the tomb, you whispered a final farewell, knowing that he could now hear you. Your house of 1,000,000 years is small. You write on the papyrus, your words a mix of apology and pride. But I filled it with all you would need. I pray it is enough. You are not a queen. Your husband was not a pharaoh. His tomb is not a pyramid that scrapes the sky, nor a sprawling, painted labyrinth in the Valley of the Kings. His tomb is like that of his peers, the craftsmen of Deir el-Medina, a humble hand-carved chamber cut into the rocky Theban hills. But it is his a place for his ka to reside forever, a permanent anchor in the world of the living. You remember the day you chose the spot long before he fell ill. It was a common practice to prepare one's tomb while still alive. It was not seen as morbid. It was seen as prudent, a final act of responsibility. You both saved for it, putting aside a portion of grain or a few copper daben from each payment he received from the pharaoh's administrators. You hired the stonemasons from your own village, his own friends, to carve out the simple rectangular chamber and the shaft leading down to it. Inside, the walls are plastered with mud and straw, then whitewashed. There are no elaborate murals depicting his journey through the underworld that is a luxury for the very wealthy. But in one corner, you paid a painter, a friend of your husband's, to paint a small image of you and him, seated before an offering table, your hands outstretched to receive gifts of eternity. His name and your name are written above in careful hieroglyphs, ensuring your spirits will find each other in the afterlife and share the offerings forever. It is a simple scene, but it holds all the love and hope you could afford. You filled that small room with the necessities of the afterlife. You placed clay pots filled with beer and sealed with mud stoppers. You left loaves of barley bread that would magically sustain him. There are dried figs, dates, and a small vessel of salted fish. You included his tools, his favorite chisel, his adze, his palette for mixing pigments, so he could continue his craft in the field of reeds. You put his wooden headrest beside the sarcophagus, so he could sleep comfortably. And you made sure to include 3 small Shabdi dolls. These were little figurines, shaped like mummies inscribed with a spell from the Book of the Dead. You believe that when your husband is called upon to do manual labor in the afterlife, for even paradise has its chores, he can send a Shabti in his place. O Shabti, the spell goes, if I am called to plow the fields or fill the canals with sand, you shall say, here I am. They are his eternal servants, his magical proxies. Finally, in a simple redware bowl near the entrance, you will place this letter. It is your last offering, your final gift. It is not food for his body, but a plea for his soul, his ach. You hope the bowl will keep it safe, that the words will reach him across the veil. His tomb may be small, but it is not empty. It is filled with your love, your memory, and your desperate, unwavering belief that he is still listening. Are you journeying now, my brother? You write your mind drifting from the solid reality of the tomb to the shadowy world he must now navigate. Are you on the solar bark of Ra sailing through the dark halls and the gates of fire? Do you remember the spells? The Duat, the Egyptian underworld, is not a peaceful resting place. It is a terrifying, complex landscape, a realm of trials that every soul must pass through to reach the paradise of the Field of Reeds. It is a journey of 12 hours, mirroring the 12 hours of the night, and each hour presents a new challenge, a new gate, a new host of demons and gods. You have heard the priests describe it. You have seen the images painted on the coffins of the wealthy. You imagine him now, standing on the divine boat of the sun god Ra, as it travels through the darkness. Each night, Ra must journey through the Duat to be reborn at dawn, and the souls of the justified dead are allowed to accompany him. But the journey is not safe. The greatest threat is Apep, the monstrous serpent of chaos, who tries to swallow the sun boat each night and plunge the cosmos into eternal darkness. Your husband must join the other gods and spirits in fighting off Apep, armed with the spells you so carefully purchased for him on a funerary papyrus. The Book of the Dead, as it is sometimes called, is not a single book, but a collection of these spells, a cheat sheet for the afterlife. Each spell is a password, a key to unlock a gate or appease a guardian. You pray, he remembers them. Spell for not dying a second time. Spell for not having one's head cut off. Spell for transforming into a lotus. Spell for not eating excrement. The dangers are very specific and very real. You picture him arriving at the first of the gates of the underworld. Each is guarded by a fearsome deity with a knife and a secret name. To pass, your husband must address the guardian by its name and recite the correct password. If he fails, his soul is destroyed. You shiver, imagining him standing before a gatekeeper with the head of a crocodile and the body of a man. His voice steady as he recites the words from the papyrus, you tucked into his linen wrappings. You know he was a good man, but was he a good student? Did he pay attention to the priests? Did he memorize the hymns? The Duat is a landscape of fire, of lakes of boiling water, of serpents with legs and monsters that feast on the unworthy. It is a place where your own heart can betray you, where your own sins can take physical form and hunt you down. You grip your reed pen tighter. Your letter is more than a plea for help. It is a prayer sent into the darkness, a whisper of encouragement for a man on the most important journey of his life and his death. Be strong, my husband, you write. Do not be afraid. The gods know you. I know you. I pray your heart was light. You scratch onto the papyrus the words small and tight, as if you are afraid for the gods to overhear your doubt. I pray it was lighter than the feather of Maat. I pray you were found true of voice. This is the moment that all of Egypt fears and prepares for. The final judgment, the weighing of the heart. It is the climax of the soul's perilous journey through the Duat. If he has made it past the fiery lakes and the knife-wielding gatekeepers, he now stands in the Hall of Two Truths, the courtroom of the afterlife, to face the great god Osiris, Lord of the Dead. You close your eyes and picture the scene painted 100 times in the tombs of the great. Osiris sits on his throne wrapped as a mummy, holding the crook and flail his skin, the green of rebirth. Before him stand the 42 divine assessors, the judges of the dead, each representing a specific nome or province of Egypt, and each ready to hear a confession. This is where your husband must perform the negative confession. He must stand before these gods and address each one by name, declaring his innocence of a specific sin. It is a litany of a life well lived, a moral resume for the soul. I have not killed, he must say. I have not stolen. I have not lied. I have not caused pain. I have not been greedy. I have not spoken ill of the Pharaoh. I have not been angry without cause. I have not polluted the river. 42 denials, one for each god. A declaration that he has lived a life in accordance with Ma'at, the divine principle of truth, order, and cosmic balance. You know he was a good man, an honest craftsman, a loving husband. But 42 sins is a high bar. Did he ever lose his temper? Did he ever take more than his fair share of grain? Your own heart feels heavy with the uncertainty of it all. After the confession comes the ultimate test. You imagine Anubis, the jackal-headed guide, his movements silent and graceful, leading your husband to the center of the hall. There stands a great golden scale. Anubis takes your husband's heart, the IB, the vessel of his conscience, and places it on one side of the scale. On the other side, he places a single, pure white ostrich feather, the feather of Ma'at. This is the moment of truth. The whole hall holds its breath. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing, stands ready with his scribe's palette to record the verdict. The scale begins to tip. If his heart is heavy with the weight of lies, greed, and unconfessed sins, it will sink. If it sinks, his journey is over. His soul is forfeit. The terrifying creature, Ammit the devourer of souls, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, waits hungrily beside the scales. She will leap forward and swallow his heart, and he will cease to exist, condemned to eternal nothingness. But if he lived a life of balance, if his heart is light, unburdened by wrongdoing, it will balance perfectly with the feather. Thoth will declare him Ma-Keru, true of voice, justified, and Osiris will welcome him into the field of reeds. You send all your love, all your hope across the veil of death, a silent prayer to tip the scales in his favor. Your heart was always good. You whisper as you write, let them see it. Let them see you as I saw you. And so I ask you, my justified one, my Ach-Iker and Mayat, you write using the formal title for a blessed spirit who has passed the judgment. Hear my plea. Do not be deaf to my words, for you have power now. You walk among the gods. You speak their language. I ask you to use that power for me, your wife who is left behind in the world of the living. Now you have come to the heart of the letter, the reason for the expensive papyrus, the carefully mixed ink, the long, painful memories. This is not just an expression of grief. It is a legal petition, an appeal to a powerful spiritual entity who owes you a duty of care. This is the core of Egyptian belief. The dead are not gone. They are merely in another, more influential place, and they can be called upon to act. You detail your complaint with the precision of a scribe filing a court case. Your cousin Peneb is a wicked man. You knew this when you lived. Now that you are a powerful Ach, he has grown bolder. He has claimed the small plot of land by the canal, the one we were given when we married. He says that because I am a woman with no son to inherit, it is his right. He has taken the wooden plow you made with your own hands. He has diverted water from my crops. He frightens my servants and tells the village elders that I am weak and cannot manage the property alone. You list the injustices one by one, a clear and damning account. This is common in letters to the dead. You have seen others. A son writes to his dead father asking for help against a brother who stole his inheritance. A woman writes to her dead mother, pleading for a cure for her sickness, believing an angry spirit is the cause. These are not sentimental notes, they are calls to action. The deceased is expected to intervene. I ask you to bring a case against him in the divine court. You continue. Speak to Osiris, speak to Thoth. Tell them of the injustice being done to your house, to your wife. Let them know that Ma'at is being broken here on earth. Cause a judgment to fall upon him. Let his own fields go barren, let his own livestock fall ill. Let the gods know that he is a man of falsehood. You are asking for spiritual retribution. You believe your husband, as a justified spirit, can act as your advocate, your lawyer in the world of the gods. He can speak to them in a way no living mortal can. He can ask them to punish the wicked and protect the righteous. You are in essence suing your cousin from across the veil of death, with your husband as your divine representative. This is a powerful, dangerous request. To call upon the dead is to stir powerful forces. But you are desperate. The laws of men have failed you. The village elders are swayed by your cousin's lies. Only your husband, armed with the truth and the power of a blessed spirit, can restore order. You are my protector in life. You write your final plea, a quiet command. Be my protector in death. Do not let me be wronged. Act for me. My brother and I will continue to make offerings to your Ka, so that you may feast in the field of reeds forever. A sudden gust of wind blows through the unshuttered window, making the oil lamp flicker. The shadows in the room dance wildly for a moment, and a chill runs down your spine that has nothing to do with the night air. You are reminded that not all spirits are as benevolent as you hope your husbands to be. Your plea is an act of faith, but it is also a risk. To commune with the dead is to open a door, and you can't always control who or what comes through. Do not let me become like the woman down the lane. You write thinking of old Iset, whose house is always filled with the smoke of purifying incense. She is haunted by a spirit who finds no peace. Let your own spirit be a guardian, not a tormentor. In your world, there is a clear distinction between the blessed dead, the Ake, and the restless dead, the Mut. The Ak are those who have successfully passed judgment and live in harmony in the afterlife. They are sources of wisdom and protection for their living relatives. But the Mut, they are the ghosts, the angry wandering spirits of those who died violently, were not buried with the proper rites, or whose tombs have been neglected. These spirits are dangerous. They are believed to bring sickness, misfortune, and chaos to the living. You've heard the stories. A child falls ill with a fever no healer can cure, and the family realizes they have failed to make offerings at their grandfather's tomb. They rush to his chapel, bringing beer bread and apologies, begging his spirit to be calm. A man suffers from terrible nightmares, and a priest tells him it is the angry ghost of a man he wronged in a business deal. The only cure is to find the ghost's family and make amends. This is why the funeral rites were so important. The mummification, the opening of the mouth, the endless offerings, they weren't just about honoring the deceased. They were about ensuring the dead stayed happy, peaceful, and frankly on their own side of the veil. A happy spirit was a helpful spirit. An angry spirit was a household plague. Your letter to your husband is not only a request for help, it is also an act of continued reverence. You are acknowledging his power, honoring his memory, and fulfilling your duty as his wife. You are reminding him that you have not forgotten him, so he has no reason to become a restless mutt. You are reinforcing the bond between you, ensuring his spirit remains a protective Ak Iker. I have done all that is required, you affirm in your writing. Your tomb is cared for. Your name is spoken with reverence. Your offerings are never late. I am a good wife to you even in your death. Therefore you have no cause to bring trouble to my house. Instead, turn your power against the one who troubles me. You are drawing a clear line, a spiritual boundary. You are invoking the proper order of the cosmos. The living care for the dead, and the dead protect the living. It is a sacred contract. Your cousin has broken the earthly contract of family. Now you are asking your husband to enforce the spiritual one. The thought gives you a sliver of comfort. You are not just a grieving widow. You are a woman who knows the rules both on this earth and in the next, and you are using them. The last of the ink dries on the papyrus. The letter is finished. Your hand aches. Your heart is empty, but your mind is clear. You have said all that can be said. You have poured your grief, your fear, and your plea into these black and red symbols. The scroll feels heavier now, laden with the weight of your hope. I will leave this bowl at your tomb. You write in the final lines, I will fill it with fresh beer and bread. I will place this letter inside it, and I will wait, for a dream, for a sign. The act of writing is done, but the ritual is not yet complete. Tomorrow at dawn, you will make the journey to the necropolis, the city of the dead on the west bank of the Nile. You will walk the dusty path that leads to the foothills, to the small hidden entrance of his tomb. You will place the offering bowl in his chapel, the small space above ground where the living can leave gifts for the dead. You will light a small stick of incense, its fragrant smoke, carrying your words and prayers up to the heavens and down into the earth. And then you will wait. How will he answer? You do not expect a voice from the sky, or a message written in the stars. The dead communicate in more subtle ways. The most common way is through dreams. You will watch your sleep carefully in the coming nights. If you dream of him happy and well-dressed in the field of reeds, it may be a sign that he has heard you and is at peace. If he speaks to you in the dream offering guidance or reassurance, you will know he is acting on your behalf. But if you dream of storms of serpents, or of him turning his back to you, it could mean he is displeased, or that his power is not enough. Dream interpretation is a respected art. The priests at the temple keep dream books catalogs of symbols and their meanings. A dream of a clear river is a good omen. A dream of a broken pot is a bad one. You will have to be patient to listen to the whispers of your own sleeping mind. You sit for a long time in the quiet room, the finished letter lying before you. A profound sense of loneliness settles over you. You have sent your message into the great silence that separates your world from his. Will there be an echo? Is anyone listening? There is no guarantee. You have only your faith in the gods, in the eternal journey of the soul, and in the love of a man who promised to protect you. Slowly, carefully, you roll the papyrus scroll. You tie it with a clean strip of linen. It is done. You have done all a mortal can do. The rest is in the hands of the dead. You blow out the oil lamp, plunging the room into darkness. And for the first time in a long time, you pray not for help, but for a dream. As you sit in the growing darkness, your eyes drift to the small amulet hanging on the mud brick wall. It's a carving of Bes the dwarf god, his face a grotesque but friendly grimace, his tongue sticking out in defiance of all evil. Your husband carved it himself from a piece of sycamore wood in the first year of your marriage. It has hung there ever since, a silent, grinning guardian. I look at you, Bes, you whisper in the letter, though you are not sure if this part is for your husband or for the god himself. You were meant to protect this house. You were meant to ward off serpents and scorpions, to frighten away the demons of the night, and to bring laughter into these walls. Did you fail to protect him, or were the shadows that came for my husband simply beyond your reach? In your world, the great gods Ra, Osiris, Amun live in magnificent stone temples attended by powerful priests and honored with grand festivals. They are the gods of the state of the pharaoh of the cosmos. They are distant, majestic, and sometimes terrifying. But in the small, humble homes of people like you, there are other gods, the little gods, the household deities who live among you, who understand your daily fears, and who are invoked not with grand ceremonies, but with a quiet touch of an amulet or a whispered prayer before sleep. Bes is the chief among them. He is no tall, beautiful sun god. He is a squat, bandy-legged dwarf with the mane of a lion and a feathered headdress. His face is often twisted in a fearsome expression, but his purpose is not to frighten you. It is to frighten away evil. He is the protector of the family, the guardian of childbirth, the god of music, dance, and humor. He is the divine force that stands against the darkness that creeps in from the desert. You remember your husband carving the small figure, his large, calloused hands surprisingly gentle as he shaped the wood. He will keep us safe, he had said, and you had believed him. You wore a small Bes amulet around your neck during the birth of your daughter, just as your mother and grandmother had before you. And then there is Taweret, the great she-one. She is perhaps even more fearsome to behold, a goddess with the head of a hippopotamus, the limbs of a lion, the back of a crocodile, and the swollen belly of a pregnant woman. She is a terrifying hybrid of the most dangerous creatures of the Nile. But like Bes, her fearsome appearance is a shield. She is the ultimate protector of pregnant women and newborn children. She stands guard over the birthing bed, her monstrous form a divine warning to any evil spirit that dares to threaten a mother or her baby. You prayed to her fervently when your daughter was born, and your daughter was born healthy and strong. You thought your prayers had been answered. These are the gods you live with every day. Their images are not confined to temples. They are carved into your furniture, painted on your walls, worn as amulets, and even shaped into the handles of your cosmetic jars. They have no formal priesthood, no vast estates. Their worship is personal, intimate. You leave them small offerings, a drop of beer, a piece of bread, a flower from the garden. You speak to them not in formal hymns, but as you would speak to a respected, powerful elder in your own family. But now, looking at the grinning face of Bess on the wall, your faith wavers. The protector did not protect. The guardian of life did not stop death. Where were you when his fever burned? You write your question a silent accusation. Where were you, Toweret, when the man of this house was taken, leaving his child without a father? I still honor you. I still leave you offerings, but I do not understand your silence. The little gods of the household feel very far away tonight. Their familiar faces, once a source of comfort, now seem like hollow masks. Their divine power no match for the simple, brutal finality of a human fever. The silence in your house feels heavier than ever. The bread tastes like dust now. You write the memory of your last shared meal a sharp pain in your chest. The beer is bitter. The figs have lost their sweetness. How can I eat when the seat across from me is empty? Food was never a luxury in your life. It was a constant, grueling necessity. The rhythm of your days was marked by the grinding of grain, the baking of bread, and the brewing of beer. These were not chores you did alone. They were a shared labor, a partnership. Now, every step of the process is a reminder of his absence. You remember the mornings rising before the sun to begin grinding the emmer wheat for the day's bread. You would kneel together at the large flat saddle quern, the grinding stone. He would push the heavy handstone forward, and you would pull it back, a slow, rhythmic motion that turned the hard grains into coarse flour. It was backbreaking work. Your arms would ache and your knees would be raw from the stone floor. But you did it together. The sound of the stone grinding on stone was the first sound of your morning, a sound of provision of life. Now you grind the grain alone, and the sound is hollow, a lonely echo in a silent house. And the bread, you can still smell it, the scent of yeast and warm grain rising from the communal village oven. You would noob token the dough, a simple mix of flour, water, and a starter from the previous day's batch. The dough was heavy, stubborn, but you kneaded it with strong hands, thinking of the meal it would become. Every loaf had a little bit of grit in it, tiny particles of sand from the grinding stones. You were so used to it, you barely noticed. It was just the taste of bread. But now that grit feels different. It feels like the desert, like the tomb, like the dust he has become. You eat it, and it feels like you are eating your own sorrow. Then there was the beer henket, the drink of gods and men. It was not the clear, golden liquid of other lands. It was thick, nutritious, and slightly sour, more like a liquid porridge. You brewed it together from barley bread, which you would crumble into large clay jars with water and dates for sweetness. You would let it ferment for days until it became the cloudy, life-sustaining beverage that you drank at every meal. Even your daughter drank it, as all children did. It was safer than the water from the river. It gave strength for the long day's work. You and your husband would share a cup in the evenings, your bodies tired, your minds at peace. It was the taste of companionship. Now you drink it alone, and it tastes only of bitterness. Every sip is a reminder of the cup he is not sharing. You look at the food laid out for your own solitary meal. A piece of flatbread, a few pickled onions, a small bowl of lentil stew. It is the same food you have eaten your entire life. It is the food that sustained him, but now it feels foreign in your mouth. How can the world continue to have flavor when my own life has lost all of its taste? You write, dipping your pen in the ink. The letter feels like the only thing you can consume now, the only thing that has any meaning. You are feeding your grief with words because you can no longer stomach the bread. The sounds of the village are the same. You write, pausing to listen to the world outside your door. But I hear them differently now. Every sound is a measure of your silence. Your village of Deir el Medina has its own unique music, a symphony of labor and life that has been the backdrop to your entire existence. You once found it comforting, a steady rhythm that assured you that the world was in its proper order. Now it is a constant painful reminder of the one sound that is missing his. The morning still begins with the sharp, rhythmic clink, clink, clink of copper chisels on limestone. It's the sound of the men, the tomb builders, leaving for their work in the Valley of the Kings. Your husband was one of them. You would hear his footsteps in the pre-dawn darkness, the soft scrape of his leather sandals on the packed earth path, a sound as familiar to you as your own breathing. You would listen until it faded, and then you would begin your day. Now you hear the other men leaving their voices low as they pass your house, and his footsteps are not among them. The morning now begins not with a sound, but with its absence. Later in the day, the sounds of the women take over. You hear the high, cheerful chatter from the public well, a place of gossip and camaraderie. You used to join them, your water jar balanced on your head, sharing stories and complaints about husbands and children. You still go, because you must have water, but you stand at the edge of the circle. Their laughter feels distant alien. They speak to you in soft, pitying tones, and you know they are whispering about you, the poor widow, as soon as you turn to leave. There are other sounds, too. The incessant braying of a neighbor's donkey, a sound that once made you both laugh. The cries of the vendors who walk the narrow streets selling fish from the Nile pottery, from the riverside kilns, or fresh vegetables, garlic onions, sweet melons. Their voices call out the same calls you've heard every day of your life. But now they sound mocking a litany of things you have no heart to buy or cook for one. In the evenings, the sound of children playing fills the air, their shrieks of joy as they chase a stray dog or play a game with knucklebones used to make you smile. You would watch your own daughter among them, her laughter a bright thread in the tapestry of village noise. Now the sound of her laughter is a painful reminder that she is growing up without a father to hear it. And then there is the temple. At dusk, you can hear the faint sound of chanting from the small local temple dedicated to Hathor and Amun-Ra. The priest voices rise and fall in ancient hymns, a sound meant to bring peace and order to the universe. It used to bring you peace. It used to feel like the gods were watching over your small village, keeping it safe. Now the chanting feels like a lament for all that has been lost. You write, all the sounds of life go on. The chisel, the well, the market, the temple. The world has not stopped. It has only stopped for me. In our house there is only one sound now, the scratch of my pen on this papyrus. It is the only voice I have left. The silence he left behind is not empty. It is filled with the echoes of every sound he no longer makes. I walked to the market yesterday. You write, remembering the difficulty of the simple errand. The men look at me differently now. Their eyes linger too long. The women whisper behind their hands. They do not see a wife. They see a widow, and a widow is a different creature entirely. In the eyes of Egyptian law, you are a person of standing. You can own property. You can make contracts. You can stand before the village court, the kenbet, and speak for yourself. You are not the property of your husband or your father. This you know. These are your rights. But the law written on papyrus and the unwritten laws of village life are two very different things. A woman alone is a woman vulnerable. When your husband was alive, you walked through the village with an invisible shield of protection. You were his wife. Your household was his household. To disrespect you was to disrespect him, a respected craftsman. Men would nod to you politely. Women would greet you as an equal. Your place in the world was secure, defined by your connection to him. Now that shield is gone. When you walk to the market, you feel the shift. The men who once offered a respectful nod now let their gaze wander, sizing you up. Some see an opportunity. A woman without a husband is a woman without a male protector. You have already seen it in the actions of your husband's cousin. Others see you as an object of pity, a problem to be managed. They offer you unsolicited advice, their voices dripping with condescension, as if you have forgotten how to barter for fish, or choose a sound cooking pot simply because your husband is gone. The women are no better. They gather in small clusters, their conversation stopping when you approach. You can feel their eyes on your back as you walk away. Some of it is pity, you know, but some of it is fear and suspicion. A widow is an unmoored thing, a disruption to the tidy, married world of the village. Are you looking for a new husband too quickly? Are you a potential rival for their own husband's attention? Are you managing your household properly? You are now a subject of constant silent judgment. You have to be stronger now, harder. When the merchant at the grain stall tries to shortchange you, you cannot let it pass. You must call him out, your voice sharp and steady, even when your hands are trembling. You have to bargain more fiercely, work more visibly, and show no sign of weakness. Weakness is an invitation for others to take what is yours. You think of your husband's cousin again. His challenge to your ownership of the land is not just about greed, it is a test. He is testing your strength, your resolve, your place in the village, now that you stand alone. He assumes you will crumble. He assumes you will yield to the pressure of a man's voice in a world run by men. This is why I write to you. You tell your husband on the scroll. The law says I have rights, but the world does not always listen to the law. It listens to power. You were my power. You were my protection. Now that you are an Achi, I need you to be my protection once more. Make them see me not as a widow to be pitied or preyed upon, but as the wife of a powerful spirit whom they should fear to cross. You are not just asking for justice. You are asking for your place in the world back. Do you remember the last beautiful feast of the valley? You write a wave of warmth spreading through your chest as you summon a happier memory. We sat by your father's tomb all night. Our daughter fell asleep in your lap, her small hand clutching your finger. The air was filled with music and the scent of roasting meat. You smiled at me in the torchlight. I thought that night would last forever. Life in Egypt was not all toil and grief. It was punctuated by festivals, dozens of them, throughout the year, great explosions of communal joy, religious fervor, and feasting. These were the times the strict rules of daily life were loosened when the entire community came together to honor the gods, and in doing so, to honor each other. The greatest festivals in Thebes were the Opet festival and the beautiful Feast of the Valley, and your memories of them with him are a painful comfort. The Opet was a magnificent spectacle. For 11 days, the statues of the Theban triad, Amun Mut, and their son, Khonsu, were taken from their sanctuary in the great Karnak temple and placed on ceremonial barks, golden boats carried on the shoulders of priests. The procession would then move slowly along the avenue of the Sphinxes, a journey of nearly 2 miles to the Luxor temple. The entire city would turn out to watch. You remember standing in the crowds, the sun beating down the air, filled with the sound of trumpets, drums, and the chanting of priests. You would hold his hand, your daughter perched on his shoulders, so she could see the golden boats pass by. It was a time of awe, a moment when the gods literally walked among mortals. There were feasts, there was drinking, there was a sense of a shared divine purpose. But your favorite was always the beautiful Feast of the Valley. It was more personal, more intimate. During this festival, the statue of Amun would journey from Karnak across the Nile to the West Bank to visit the mortuary temples of the dead pharaohs. But for ordinary people like you, it was a time to honor your own ancestors. It was a festival of the dead that was full of life. You and your husband would pack baskets with bread, beer, roasted fowl, and sweet cakes. You would cross the river with hundreds of other families, each making a pilgrimage to the tomb of their loved ones in the Theban necropolis. The city of the dead, normally a place of silence and reverence, would be transformed into a vibrant gathering place. Families would set up mats outside the tomb chapels of their ancestors, sharing a meal, not in mourning, but in celebration. You believed that on this night the veil between the worlds was at its thinnest. The spirits of the dead, your ancestors and his, could join the feast. You would leave offerings for them, but you would also eat and drink with them, telling them stories, asking for their blessing. It was a family reunion that transcended death itself. You remember that last feast so clearly. The laughter, the music drifting from a nearby tomb, the way the torchlight made his face glow. He told you that one day your own children and grandchildren would come to this very spot to share a meal with the two of you. The memory is so vivid it hurts. You promised We would feast together for 1,000,000 years. You write a single tear falling onto the papyrus, smudging the ink. I still bring you offerings. I still speak your name. But the feast is silent now, and I eat alone. Last night I found a scorpion near the water jar. You write the memory of the creature's glistening black tail, making you shiver. Its sting poised a sliver of death in the lamplight. You were always the one who dealt with them. You would crush it with your sandal, without a second thought. I stood there frozen until it scurried back into a crack in the wall. The house does not feel safe without you. Your life is surrounded by dangers, both seen and unseen. The desert that borders your village is not an empty wasteland. It is a realm of threats that are a constant part of your reality. The physical dangers are easy enough to name. Scorpions, with their venomous sting, are a common terror. They hide in cool, dark places, under pots, in piles of linen, within the very walls of your house. A sting can bring agonizing pain fever, and for a small child or an elderly person, death. Snakes, too, are a constant menace. The cobra, with its deadly venom, and the horned viper which hides in the sand, are feared throughout Egypt. You teach your children to tread carefully, to never reach into dark corners, to always be watchful. The river, the source of all life, is also a source of death. Crocodiles. The embodiment of the god Sobek lurk in its murky depths. They are swift, powerful, and utterly without mercy. You have heard stories of fishermen, of children, playing by the water's edge, snatched in an instant, pulled under without a sound. You teach your daughter to never go near the river alone, to always respect its silent, powerful inhabitants. But it is the unseen dangers that trouble you most. You believe the world is teeming with invisible forces, with spirits and demons that can bring sickness and misfortune. The desert itself is home to malevolent entities, ghosts of foreign lands, who envy Egypt's bounty. You wear amulets to protect yourself. The Eye of Horus, for health and wholeness. The Ankh, for life. A small charm of the god, best to frighten away evil spirits in the night. Your house has them too, tucked into the walls, or hanging over the doorway. You believe that sickness can be caused by the breath of an enemy, a curse sent by a spiteful neighbor, or a jealous rival. It can be caused by a demon entering the body, or by the wrath of a god you have unintentionally offended. This is why healers use spells as much as they use herbs. The physical and the magical are two sides of the same coin. A poultice might heal the wound on the skin, but only an incantation can drive out the spirit that caused it. Your husband was your physical protector. His strong arm and quick reflexes kept the mundane dangers at bay. But he was also your spiritual shield. His presence, his confidence made the house feel secure from the whispers in the dark. Now you feel exposed. Every creak of the house at night, every shadow that moves in the corner of your eye, feels like a threat. The world is filled with dangers, my brother. You write your plea becoming more urgent. I am a woman alone, with a child to protect. The scorpion in the house is a small thing, but it is a reminder of all the other things that can sting, all the other poisons that can enter our lives. Protect us. Be the amulet that hangs over our door. Be the spell that drives the darkness away. Stand guard over your house, even from the land of the dead. You are asking him to be the guardian he always was, to use his new spiritual power to fight the unseen battles you now feel so acutely. I washed your tunic today. You write the memory of the task still fresh. I held it in my hands. It is worn thin in places, stained with the red ochre from the tombs. It still smells of you, of the dust and the sun. I folded it and placed it in the chest. I do not know why. It is too painful to see, but I cannot bear to part with it. Clothing in ancient Egypt is simple. The heat demands it. For most of your life, you have worn only linen, the fabric of your people, a gift from the fertile earth. You think of the process, a cycle as old as the pyramids. You remember the fields of flax, their delicate blue flowers dancing in the breeze before the harvest. You remember the stalks being pulled from the ground, soaked in water until the outer fibers rotted away, then beaten and combed to release the soft, strong threads within. Then came the spinning, a task for women. You would spend countless hours with a small weighted spindle twisting the flax fibers into a single continuous thread. Your fingers knew the rhythm by heart. It was a meditative communal task done with other women in the shade of a courtyard, your voices and the whirring of your spindles blending into a gentle hum. That thread was then woven on a large wooden loom, another task for skilled hands. The result was linen light, airy, and brilliantly white. For you and your husband, your garments were simple. He wore a short kilt, a shendit wrapped around his waist, leaving his chest bare to the sun as he worked. On cooler evenings, or for festivals, he might wear a longer, tunic-like shirt. You wear a calasiris, a simple straight dress, held up by two straps over your shoulders. It is practical for working, for kneeling, for moving. It does not constrain you. White is the color of your world. White linen represents purity, light, and ritual cleanliness. It is the color you wear for religious festivals, the color of the priest's robes, and the color of the bandages used to wrap the dead for their journey to the afterlife. It is the color of ma'at, of order and truth. Dyes are a luxury. The wealthy might wear tunics, dyed with saffron for yellow or woad for blue. But for you, the clean, stark white of natural linen is enough. It is the color of your identity. But clothing is more than just fabric. It is a language, the quality of your linen, the fineness of the weave, the presence of pleats. These are all subtle signals of your status. A high-ranking official would wear a kilt of almost transparent, gossamer-thin linen, meticulously pleated. You and your husband wore a sturdier, coarser weave, made for a life of labor. You owned only a few garments each. They were washed in the Nile, beaten against rocks, to remove the dirt and bleached white again under the sun. They were mended, patched, and worn until they were too thin to be repaired. Now, as you touch his folded tunic in the chest, the feel of the worn linen is a powerful, painful connection to him. This fabric touched his skin. It absorbed his sweat. It carried the scent of his life. It is more than a piece of clothing. It is a relic. They wrapped you in the finest linen for your journey, you write. Hundreds of yards of it to keep you pure. But it is this simple, worn tunic that I will keep. It is the only thing left that still feels like you. The scribes will come soon. You write, a knot of anxiety tightening in your stomach. They will come with their measuring ropes and their pallets to survey the fields. They will count the sheaves from the harvest. I fear I will not have enough grain to meet the quota. I fear what they will do. This is a fear every farmer in Egypt knows. The tax is not a request. It is a divine right of the Pharaoh. The entire land of Egypt belongs to him and by extension to the gods. You are merely tenants on the land of the gods, and you must pay your rent. The tax is not paid in coin. It is paid in what you produce: grain, livestock, linen, beer. It is the lifeblood of the state, feeding the army, the priesthood, and the thousands of laborers who build the great temples and tombs. The process is methodical, efficient, and utterly without mercy. After the harvest, the scribes of the Pharaoh's granary arrive in the village. They are men of immense power. They can read and write the sacred Medu Neter, the words of the gods. They carry papyrus scrolls and palettes with black and red ink. They are the accountants of the empire. They first measure your fields using long ropes marked with knots. Then, they estimate your harvest, counting the stacks of grain from your threshing floor. They are experts at this, their eyes sharp, missing nothing. They calculate the amount you owe, a percentage based on the size of your land and the height of the Nile's last flood. That height was measured by the priests using a nilometer, a stone staircase that descended into the river, its markings indicating the flood's peak. A high flood meant fertile land and high taxes. A low flood meant potential famine, and if the Pharaoh was merciful, lower taxes. Once the amount is calculated, it is recorded. There is no appeal. You watch as the grain you and your husband toiled for months to grow is loaded onto donkeys and taken away to the state granaries. It is a painful sight. What remains is what you have to live on for the entire year to feed your family, to save for seed for the next planting, and to barter for other goods in the market. If you cannot pay, the consequences are severe. The scribes have guards with them often, Nubian soldiers who carry heavy wooden rods. A beating is the common punishment for a tax shortfall. They can take your livestock, your tools, even your furniture. In the worst cases, a farmer can be thrown into forced labor until the debt is paid. Now that your husband is gone, you face the scribes alone. Your cousin has taken your plow and disturbed your fields. Your harvest is smaller than it should be. You know the scribes will not care about your excuses. They do not care about grieving widows or greedy cousins. They care only about the numbers on their scrolls. You were always so good at negotiating with them. You write, remembering how your husband, with his quiet strength and honest reputation, could sometimes persuade the scribes to be lenient. They respected you. They do not respect me. I am just a woman. I need your ach to stand beside me when they come. Let them feel your powerful presence. Make their hearts soft. Make them be fair. Protect your grain, my husband. Protect your house. You are asking him to be your advocate, not just with the gods, but with the cold, unforgiving bureaucracy of the state. The village elders will not help me. You write the frustration evident in the sharp, angry strokes of your hieroglyphs. I went before the Kenbet yesterday. I told them of the injustice. They listened, but they did not hear. They listened to your cousin's words, not mine. They see a man's loud voice, and they see a woman's tears, and they call that justice. You have tried to solve this problem in the world of the living. You have followed the proper channels. In your village, as in all of Egypt, there is a local court, the Kenbet. It is not a grand hall with marble columns and a judge in a powdered wig. It is a gathering of the village elders, the most respected men, and sometimes women of the community. They meet in the shade of a sycamore tree or at the village gate, and they listen to the disputes of their neighbors. They handle everything: arguments over property lines, accusations of theft, disputes over inheritance, even cases of assault. There are no professional lawyers. You must speak for yourself, and so you did. You stood before the elders, your voice trembling but clear. You presented your case. You told them of the marriage contract that granted you and your husband the land. You told them how your cousin Pa Neb had seized your plow and threatened your servants. You swore an oath on the name of the Pharaoh and the great God, Amun-Ra, that your words were true. Then your cousin spoke. He was loud, confident, his voice booming with false righteousness. He claimed the land was only ever meant to be your husband's, and, with him gone and no son to inherit it, rightfully passed to the closest male relative, him. He brought witnesses, other men from his side of the family, who swore oaths that his claims were true. They lied, of course. Their hearts must be heavy as stones, but their voices were many, and yours was one. The elders listened. They stroked their beards. They looked at you with a mixture of pity and impatience. In theory, you have legal standing. A woman's testimony is valid in court. A woman can own and inherit property. But in practice, the word of a man, especially a loud and confident one, often carries more weight than the word of a grieving widow. The Kenbet is not just a court of law. It is a court of social pressure. They urged you to compromise. Perhaps you can share the land, one elder suggested. It is better to have peace in the village than to fight over a small plot. They did not see it as a fight for justice. They saw it as a disruption. Your grief was becoming inconvenient. You left the gathering with nothing. No verdict, no protection, just the quiet suggestion that you should give up. The laws of men, you have learned, are weak. They can be bent by lies, swayed by loud voices, and eroded by the simple desire for an easy peace. That is why I have turned to you, you write on the scroll. The court of men has failed me, so I now bring my case to the court of the gods. You are my witness. You are my advocate. They did not listen to my voice, but perhaps they will listen to the voice of a justified spirit who speaks from beyond the tomb. Make them listen. Remind them what is Ma'at. Remind them what is true. Your letter is no longer just a plea. It has become an appeal to a higher court, the only one you have left. A caravan of Nubian traders passed through the village yesterday. You write, shifting your thoughts from your own small troubles to the larger world that presses in at the edges of your life. They came with incense ebony and ivory from the lands to the south. Their skin was the color of the dark, rich earth, and they spoke a language that fell like strange music on my ears. They looked at our village with the eyes of strangers. It made me feel small, and it made me remember the world is so much bigger than this valley. Your Egypt is the center of the universe. You know this. It is the jewel of the world, blessed by the gods, protected by the deserts, and nourished by the sacred Nile. All other lands, Nubia to the south, Libya to the west, the lands of the Asiatics to the east are foreign, chaotic, and inferior. This is what the priests teach. This is what the pharaoh's monuments declare. Egypt is order. The rest of the world is chaos. But your world is not as isolated as the priests would have you believe. Foreigners are a common sight, a constant presence in the fabric of your life. You see the Nubians with their dark skin and gold earrings trading goods in the market. They are skilled archers, and many serve in the pharaoh's army, their loyalty bought with Egyptian grain and gold. They are respected for their strength, but they are always seen as outsiders. You see the Libyans too often as captives of war, their families brought to Egypt to serve as laborers or domestic servants. They have lighter skin and are sometimes depicted with braided hair and tattoos in the tomb paintings. They are a reminder of Egypt's military might, a living symbol of the pharaoh's power to subdue the chaotic lands beyond the western desert. From the east come the Asiatics, the traders from Syria and Canaan, bringing with them fine cedar wood for building boats and temples, beautiful glassware, and exotic oils. They travel in long donkey caravans, their language and customs strange and fascinating. Your own village, dear El Medina, is a cosmopolitan place. Many of the craftsmen who work on the royal tombs are of foreign descent, their ancestors brought to Egypt generations ago. Their names and their faces are a testament to the empire's long reach. Your husband, a man of Egypt, often dealt with these foreigners. He bought pigments from Syrian merchants and admired the intricate carvings on Nubian daggers. He was curious about their worlds, but he was always certain of his own. There is no land like Egypt, he would say. No river like the Nile, no gods as powerful as ours. He was proud. His identity as an Egyptian was as solid as the stone he carved. Now, as you see these foreigners pass, you feel a flicker of fear. Your world feels less certain without him. Egypt is powerful, yes, but it has enemies. The Hittites, the Libyans, the Sea Peoples. History is a long story of battles fought to keep the chaos at bay. You are in the land of the gods now, you write to your husband. But here in the land of the living, the world is filled with strangers. Keep our borders safe in your prayers. Keep our home safe from the chaos that lies beyond the desert. You are an Ak of Egypt. Protect Egypt. Protect me. Your personal plea has now become intertwined with a larger one, a prayer for the safety and endurance of your entire world. You get up from your stool and walk to the small wooden chest in the corner of the room. You lift the lid. Inside, resting on a piece of clean linen, are his tools. They lie silent now. They wait for a hand that will not return. You pick one up, a copper chisel, its wooden handle worn smooth and dark from the sweat and oil of his hands. It is cool to the touch and heavy. I look at your chisels, your mallets, your palettes. You write your voice in the letter soft with a new kind of grief, one tied not just to the man, but to his life's work. They are quiet now. The song of stone and metal is gone from this house. Only the memory of their sound remains. He was a sesh Qued, a painter, a draftsman, one of the skilled artisans who brought the tombs to life. His work was not just a job, it was a sacred calling. He painted the images that would guide the dead through the underworld. He carved the hieroglyphs that would preserve a name for eternity. His hands created magic. You remember watching him work. He would sit for hours grinding pigments on a stone palette. Malachite, a green stone from the Sinai, was crushed into a fine powder for the vibrant greens of the field of reeds. Red ochre, a clay from the desert, became the rich, earthy red of a god's skin or a ceremonial vessel. He made black from the soot of cooking fires, just as you do for your ink. Each color had a meaning, a power. He would mix the powders with water and a binder, perhaps gum arabic, to create his paint. His tools were simple but effective. Chisels of hardened copper for carving the reliefs into the limestone walls. Wooden mallets for tapping the chisels with steady, precise blows. And for painting, he used brushes made from fine reeds, their ends chewed and teased into delicate points, allowing him to paint the intricate details of a feather, an eye, or a hieroglyph. His work was dangerous. The tombs were deep underground, dark and poorly ventilated. He worked by the flickering light of oil lamps, the air thick with stone dust and smoke. The dust settled in his lungs, and you know now that it likely contributed to the sickness that took him. He and the other workers were given extra rations from the Pharaoh's stores, more grain, more fish, more beer, because their work was so important. They were the keepers of eternity. He loved his craft. He would come home, his body aching, his clothes covered in white limestone dust. But his eyes would be bright with the satisfaction of a day's work well done. He would tell you about the scenes he was painting, the goddesses Isis and Nephthys, mourning over the body of Osiris, the pharaoh standing before the gods in the Hall of Judgment. He wasn't just painting pictures. He was weaving spells, creating a reality that would outlast stone. Now his tools lie silent. The chisels will not ring again. The palette will not be filled with the bright colors of paradise. The hand that knew how to make stone speak is still. Who will paint the stars on the ceilings of the tombs now you write? Who will carve the words that guide the dead? Your work remains a beautiful silent testament on the walls of eternity. But your tools, like my heart, are empty. You place the chisel back in the chest and close the lid, a final quiet farewell to the artist you loved. Your daughter comes into the room, her small bare feet silent on the packed earth floor. She sees the papyrus, the ink, the look on your face. She is only 6 years old, but her eyes are old with a new kind of knowing. She does not ask what you are doing. She asks the question she has asked every day for the past month. When is father coming home? Her voice is a tiny, hopeful thing in the heavy silence. How do you answer? How do you explain the complexities of the soul, the terrors of the duat, and the promise of the field of reeds to a child who only understands the warmth of her father's hand in hers? How do you explain eternity to someone whose life has just begun? You put down your pen and pull her into your lap. She leans against you, her small body soft and warm. Your father is on a journey. You tell her the words you have repeated so many times they have begun to feel hollow. A very long journey to the land of the gods. She looks up at you, her brow furrowed. But why can't we go with him? Because it is a journey he must make alone for now. You say, stroking her dark hair. He has to cross a great river and pass through 7 gates. He has to prove to the gods that his heart is good and true. You try to use the stories she knows, the myths painted on the temple walls. You tell her that her father is sailing on the sunboat with Ra fighting the great serpent Apep every night to make sure the sun can rise again in the morning. You tell her he is with Osiris now in a beautiful place called the Field of Reeds, where the barley grows as tall as a man and the fig trees are always heavy with fruit. You tell her there is no sickness there, no sorrow, no hard work. He is happy, he is at peace. She listens, her dark eyes wide. So he is a star now, she asks, remembering the belief that the souls of the justified dead can become the Yahu, the indestructible ones who shine in the night sky. Yes. You whisper, your voice catching. He is a star, and he is watching over us. But you know your words are not enough. They are stories beautiful and sacred, but they cannot replace the feeling of his arms lifting her up, of his laugh echoing in the house. She misses him in a simple, profound way that theology cannot touch. She misses the way he would carve her small wooden toys, the way he would let her ride on his shoulders. She misses his presence, and so do you. But if he is watching, she asks, her voice small, why doesn't he come back? That is the question you cannot answer. That is the question you are asking him yourself in this very letter. He cannot come back. You say, your own grief a heavy stone in your chest. But we can speak to him. We can leave him offerings at his tomb. And sometimes, if we are very lucky, he will visit us in our dreams. She seems to accept this for now. She lays her head on your shoulder, her breathing slow and steady. You hold her tight, the two of you, a small island in a vast ocean of loss. You are trying to explain eternity to a child, but in doing so, you are also trying to convince yourself. You are trying to build a bridge of words and beliefs strong enough to span the great silent abyss between the living and the dead. In your letter, you add a new line, one not for him, but for her. Our daughter misses you, you write. Protect her dreams. Visit her as a whisper on the wind, so she knows her father has not forgotten her. The priests say, if I am justified, I will see you again. You write, and this is the thought that sustains you through the long, lonely nights. They say that husbands and wives who have honored the gods and each other will be reunited in the afterlife. They say, I will sail with you on the lily lake and walk with you in the field of reeds. This is the ultimate promise of your faith, the bedrock of your endurance. Death is not a final separation. It is a temporary one. If you live a life of Mayat, if your heart is found to be as light as the feather, you too will pass the judgment and enter the eternal paradise of Aru, the field of reeds. And there he will be waiting. You close your eyes and allow yourself to imagine it, a vision as vivid as any tomb painting. Aru is not some ethereal cloudy heaven. It is a perfected version of the Egypt you know and love. The sun is always gentle, never scorching. The breeze is always cool. The Nile flows slow and clear, its banks lined not with mud, but with endless fields of towering barley and emmer wheat. The crops grow without effort. The harvest is always abundant. There is no hunger, no thirst, no sickness, no sorrow. You see him there, not as a craftsman covered in dust, but as a nobleman dressed in fine, clean white linen. He is young again, his body strong and whole, free from the fever that took him. He is smiling. You see yourself walking toward him, also young, also whole. You run to him, and he holds you, and the years of grief and loneliness melt away like a mirage in the desert heat. The priests say that in the afterlife, families are reunited. You will be with your parents again, and he with his. You will all live together in a beautiful house by the banks of a tranquil canal, feasting, playing games of sonnet, and listening to the music of harps. Your daughter, when her time comes, many, many years from now, will join you there. The family will be complete again, not just for a lifetime, but for all of eternity. This is the hope that gets you out of your sleeping mat in the morning. It is the hope that allows you to face the pitying glances of the villagers and the greedy threats of your cousin. Your life on earth is a temporary trial, a brief moment of suffering before an eternity of bliss. Every good deed you do, every offering you make, every prayer you whisper is a step closer to him. This belief is why you prepare your own funerary goods with such care. You are already saving up for a fine linen shroud. You have a small wooden box where you keep a few special amulets that you will be buried with. You are not preparing for death. You are preparing for a reunion. I will live my life in truth. You write your hieroglyphs of vow to the gods and to him. I will keep my heart light so that it may balance against the feather. I will pass the judgment, and I will find you again. Wait for me on the other side of the lily lake. Wait for me, my brother. Wait for me. The thought is so powerful, so filled with longing, that for a moment the grief recedes, replaced by a fierce, determined hope. You have a destination. You have a purpose. You are not just a widow. You are a soul on a journey home. But then, as the lamp sputters and the shadows in the room grow longer, a new and colder fear creeps into your heart. It is a fear that has nothing to do with gods or ghosts or greedy cousins. It is a quieter, more insidious fear. But sometimes I am afraid. You confess to the papyrus, your words a bare whisper. I am afraid I will forget. I am afraid that with each passing sunrise your image will fade a little more. I am afraid that one day I will try to picture your face, and all I will see is the painted mask on your coffin. I am afraid I will forget the sound of your laugh. This is the cruelest trick of time. It does not just take the person. It slowly, methodically steals the memory of them too. At first, the memories were sharp, vibrant, almost painful in their clarity. You could remember the exact way he would squint his eyes when he was concentrating on a delicate piece of carving. You could hear the low hum he would make in his throat when he was content. You could feel the callous texture of his hand holding yours. These memories were your most precious possessions, the relics of your love that no one could take from you. But now, weeks after his death, you find the edges of these memories beginning to soften, to blur. When you try to recall his face, your mind sometimes conjures the idealized, serene face from his funerary mask before it finds the real one, the one with the small scar above his left eye from a slipped chisel, the one with the lines around his mouth when he smiled. You have to fight to remember the details, the imperfections that made him real, that made him yours. You panic when you realize you can't quite remember the sound of his laugh. Was it a loud, hearty sound, or a quiet chuckle? You know you loved it, but the exact melody of it is slipping away like a song heard in a dream. You close your eyes and try to summon it, but all you can hear is the wind outside your door. This is a new kind of loss, a second death. The death of the small, intimate details that made up your life together. The world of the living moves on relentlessly. New sounds, new sights, new worries fill your days, and each one pushes the memories of him a little further away. You find yourself talking to him throughout the day, describing what you are doing, not just as a plea, but as an act of defiance against forgetting. I am grinding the grain, now my husband. Do you see I am using the stone you smoothed for me? You fear that one day he will become just a story you tell your daughter, a collection of facts. He was a good man, a skilled craftsman, your father, but without the vivid breathing reality of the person himself. He will become a name on a tomb, a spirit to whom you make offerings, but no longer the man whose presence filled your house. This letter, you write a new urgency in your hand, is not just for you, it is for me. I am writing these things down to hold on to them. I am carving our memories into this scroll so they will not turn to dust. I am writing to remember the feel of your hand, the sound of your voice, the way you looked at me across the fire. I am writing to keep you alive, not just in the field of reeds, but here, in my heart. The fear of forgetting is a cold and lonely one. It is a battle you must fight every day, armed only with memory and ink. The oil in your lamp is nearly gone. The flame, once a steady golden eye, now sputters and shrinks a dying ember in the deep darkness of the room. The night is old. Your hand is cramped. The papyrus scroll is filled with your words, your memories, your grief. There is nothing left to say. I have said all I can say. You write in the final trailing lines of the letter. The rest is silence, your silence, and my waiting. You have laid your case before him. You have honored his memory. You have confessed your fears. You have made your plea. Now the space between you is vast and empty, a desert of silence that only a sign from him can cross. There is a sense of finality in the act of finishing the letter. While you were writing, he felt close. His memory was a vivid presence in the room. But now, with the last word written, that presence seems to recede, leaving you alone again with the quiet, indifferent night. You dip your finger in a small pot of water and gently smooth the last edge of the papyrus. Then slowly, with the reverence of a priest handling a sacred text, you begin to roll the scroll. You roll it tightly, your fingers tracing the hieroglyphs one last time. You are sealing your words inside, trapping your plea in this fragile vessel. You take a clean strip of white linen and tie it carefully around the scroll, knotting it twice. It is done. You hold the finished letter in your hands. It feels both impossibly heavy and terrifyingly light. This small object contains all your hope. It is your weapon against your cousin, your prayer to the gods, your final conversation with the man you love. Tomorrow, you will take it to his tomb. You will place it in the offering bowl, and you will walk away leaving it behind in the darkness of his house of eternity. What happens next is beyond your control. You have done all that a mortal can do. You have followed the rituals. You have spoken to the dead. You have trusted in the cosmic order of Maat. Now, all you can do is live with the weight of silence and wait for a sign. You look at the scroll one last time before placing it in a safe place for the night. Hear me, you whisper into the darkness of the room. My brother, my husband, my protector, hear me. You blow out the lamp. The last flicker of light dies, and you are left in complete, profound darkness. The only sound is the wind, a lonely sighing whisper that seems to carry no answer at all. You crawl onto your sleeping mat, pull the rough linen sheet over you, and close your eyes, ready for a night of listening, of waiting for a dream. The papyrus is rolled and tied. Your plea is sealed. And as you sit in the silence holding this fragile message to the dead, we are left with the echo of your grief. It is easy from our modern world to look back at ancient Egypt and see only a civilization obsessed with death. We see the Great Pyramids, the golden sarcophagi, the mummified remains, the elaborate tombs, filled with treasures, and we assume these people were morbid, their lives spent in the cold shadow of their own mortality. But this is the first great myth we must dismantle. The ancient Egyptians were not obsessed with death. They were obsessed with life. They loved life so fiercely, so completely, that they could not bear the thought of it ending. Their entire religious and social structure was built not around the act of dying, but around the art of living forever. The 70-day process of mummification was not a celebration of decay. It was a desperate, brilliant battle against it. It was a way to preserve the physical body, the Khat, so that the soul, the Ka and Ba, would have an eternal home to return to. The tombs were not dark, gloomy graves. They were houses of 1,000,000 years decorated with vibrant scenes of a life the deceased wished to continue. They painted walls with images of feasting, hunting, farming, and laughing with family. They were building a blueprint for eternity, a paradise modeled on the very best moments of their time on earth. The Book of the Dead, with its terrifying imagery of demons and judgment, was not a book about dying. Its real Egyptian title was the Book of Coming Forth by Day. It was a guide for navigating the darkness of the underworld so that the soul could emerge into the eternal light of the Field of Reeds. Every spell, every ritual, every prayer was an affirmation of life, a defiant cry against the silence of the void. So when you write your letter, you are not writing to an ending. You are writing to a continuation. You are participating in this profound, life-affirming belief that the bonds of love and duty are stronger than the veil of death. You are writing to a life that has simply changed its form. The second myth that crumbles when we read these letters is the idea that ancient Egyptian marriages were cold, practical affairs. We read the marriage contracts with their focus on property and dowries, and we assume these unions were devoid of the passion and romance we value today. We see a society built on practicality, on duty, on producing heirs to continue a bloodline and work the land. And in many ways, this is true. A marriage was indeed a social and economic contract. But it was not only that. Your letter and the hundreds of poems and fragments that have survived the sands of time tell a different story. They speak of a deep and profound love, of longing, of jealousy, of a tenderness that feels shockingly modern. The love poetry of the New Kingdom is filled with passionate, intimate declarations. Lovers call each other brother and sister, not as a reflection of incest, but as a term of the deepest intimacy and equality. A man describes his beloved's voice as a sweet trap. A woman longs to be the water in which her lover bathes the linen that touches his skin. This is not the language of a cold, pragmatic contract. This is the language of a human heart alive with desire. And your letter, your plea to your husband, is the other side of that same coin. It is the expression of love after it has been fractured by loss. You do not write to a business partner. You write to the husband my heart still calls by name. You remind him of your loyalty, of your shared life, not as a legal obligation, but as an emotional truth. The grief that bleeds through your words is not for a lost contract. It is for a lost companion. These letters to the dead are perhaps the most powerful proof we have of the deep emotional bonds that existed in ancient Egypt. In a world where public displays of emotion were often constrained by ritual and formality, these letters are a raw, unfiltered window into the human soul. They are filled with anger, sorrow, love, and accusation. "Why have you forgotten me?" one letter asks. "What have I done to you?" Another pleads. These are the words of people whose hearts have been broken, people who are talking to the one person they felt truly understood them. The practicality of their society did not erase their capacity for love. It simply existed alongside it, a sturdy vessel that held the wild, beautiful, and sometimes painful waters of human affection. In the end, who is your letter really for? Is it for him, the Akaiker, the powerful spirit dwelling in the field of reeds? Do you truly believe that your words, written in soot and gum on a fragile sheet of papyrus, can cross the great expanse between worlds and compel him to act? Yes. In the context of your time, you absolutely do. Your belief is the engine of your actions. The letter is a tool, a ritual act meant to engage the powerful forces of the afterlife to restore man in your own life. It is a testament to a worldview where the living and the dead are in constant active communication, bound by mutual duties. But if we look at your letter through a modern lens, we see something else at work, something just as powerful. We see a woman processing her grief. We see a soul finding a way to give voice to the chaos of loss. The act of writing is a therapeutic one. As you remember his hands, his laugh, his work, you are not just reminding him, you are solidifying your own memories before they fade. You are fighting the second death, the death of being forgotten. As you detail the injustices you face, you are not just informing him. You are organizing your own thoughts, turning a messy emotional pain into a clear, structured argument. You are creating order from the chaos in your own heart. The letter becomes a safe container for your anger. You can accuse him of forgetting you. You can demand that he act. You can express a frustration that you could never voice to the living elders or your pitying neighbors. The papyrus can handle your rage. It will not judge you. It will not tell you to be quiet. It simply holds your truth. This is a need that has not changed in 3,000 years. How many of us today have found ourselves speaking aloud to a lost loved one in an empty room? How many have visited a grave and shared news, asked for guidance, or simply wept? How many have sent a text message to a phone number that will never be answered just to feel that connection one more time? The technology changes, but the human impulse does not. We need to speak to those we have lost. We need to believe they can hear us. We need to maintain that bond, even in silence. Your letter is both. It is a sincere, spiritual plea born of the powerful beliefs of your time. And it is a profound, timeless act of human psychology, a way to navigate the unnavigable landscape of grief, a way to speak into the silence, and in doing so, to hear your own heart. The letter is for him, and it is for you. And in that beautiful, heartbreaking duality, it becomes a bridge between worlds. The sun rises, casting a pale, golden light over the eastern cliffs. You have not slept. You have waited for the dawn, the finished papyrus scroll held carefully in your hands. Now it is time. You walk out of your quiet house into the cool morning air of the village. The path to the necropolis is already dotted with other priests on their way to the temples, workers heading to the tombs, other women carrying offerings for their own departed loved ones. There is a silent, shared understanding among you all. You are tending to eternity. You reach his tomb chapel, the small, simple space carved into the rock. You light the incense. You pour a libation of cool water onto the offering stone. You place the loaf of bread and the jar of beer before the false door, the magical entryway through which his ka can pass to receive the gifts. Then you take out your letter. You hold it for a moment, your final message, your last hope. You place it carefully inside the empty offering bowl, weighing it down with a small, smooth stone from the river. It is done. You have sent your words into the great silence. There is nothing more you can do. You turn your back on the tomb and begin the long walk home, leaving the letter to rest in the dust and the dark, a fragile bridge of ink and sorrow. There is no guarantee your plea will be answered. History does not record the outcome of your letter. It does not tell us if your husband's Akash was powerful enough to sway the gods, if your greedy cousin was ever brought to justice, or if your heart ever found peace. The scroll you wrote remains in the offering bowl, a silent testament to a single moment of hope in a lifetime of hardship. This is the truth of the past. It is not always a story with a neat and satisfying conclusion. More often, it is a collection of whispers, of fragments of unanswered questions left to be buried by the sands of time. Your story is one of millions, a single voice in a vast chorus of human experience that stretches back through millennia. The names change, the gods change, the language change. But the core of the story, love loss, and the desperate need to connect with those who have left us, that remains eternal. You walk back to your village, to a life that is still hard, to a world that is still unjust. The sun is rising higher now, the heat beginning to build. You have work to do. You have a child to raise. You have a life to live, even with its hollowed-out center. Your letter may or may not change your fate, but the act of writing it has already changed you. You have given your grief a form. You have given your love a voice. And in the great overwhelming silence of your loss, you have made a sound. And perhaps you wonder, as you lie here listening, if you could write such a letter. If you could strip away the skepticism of our modern age and believe just for a moment that the ones you have lost are not gone, but are simply waiting in another room, in another world able to hear you. Who would you write to? A parent, a grandparent, a friend, a lover. What would you say? Would you speak of your sorrow? Would you ask for their forgiveness or offer your own? Would you tell them of the small everyday things they are missing? The way the sun looked this morning, a song you heard, a joke you wish you could share. Would you, like that woman in ancient Thebes, ask for their help? Would you ask them to intervene, to send a sign to protect you from the injustices of this world? Or would you simply want to tell them one more time that you love them, that you miss them, that you have not forgotten them? Our own letters to the dead may not be written on papyrus or placed in tombs. They may be whispered into the night sky, typed out on a screen, and then deleted or simply written on the pages of our own hearts. But the impulse is the same: the need to speak, the need to connect, the need to believe that the bond is not truly broken. But you do not have to write that letter tonight. You do not have to face the heat of the Egyptian sun or the silence of a mud brick house. Your journey to Thebes is over. The dust of the necropolis is settling. The plea has been made. The papyrus scroll rests in its offering bowl, and you can let it rest too. Let it be covered by the sands of time. You are not that woman grieving by the banks of the Nile. You are not waiting for a sign in a dream. You are here, now, safe in your own bed. The air you breathe is cool and clean. The only sounds are the gentle hum of the fan, the quiet rhythm of your own house, the soft beat of your own heart. Feel the weight of your body sinking into the mattress. Feel the softness of your pillow beneath your head. There are no stone headrests here. There is no hard-packed earth floor. There is only comfort. There is only peace. Let the image of Egypt fade away. Let the great river Nile flow back into the recesses of your mind. Let the golden masks and the silent tombs dissolve into darkness. You are not there anymore. You are here. You are safe, quiet, breathing. There is nothing you need to do. There is nothing you need to solve. There is no letter to write, no plea to make. There is only this moment, this quiet, peaceful, comfortable moment. Allow your body to grow heavy. Allow your mind to grow still. Allow yourself to drift, to float on a slow, gentle river, not of the underworld but of sleep. Just let go now and sleep.